You're live. You're live.
So hi there, this is Mayank Saxena and welcome all to my speak around ecosystem thinking. So those of you joining from Europe or the same territory, good afternoon to you all. And for the rest of the people, I hope the rest of the conference will bring you some insightful discussions. So who am I? I'm Mayank. I've recently been working with ABN AMRO Bank for the past 3 years. But over the years, my career spans around 15 years within enterprise architecture, most of the times, but in different way and shape or form of architectures as well. So even AMRO Bank is largely a Netherlands-based bank. It has come after a lot of mergers and acquisitions after the subprime disaster. And over the years, we have been involved in a lot of integration with different banks and acquisitions. And one of the things that we learned from all this process is how do we manage with our customers the integrations that were acquired from different parts of the bank and also different partners and competitors that we were working with. So one of the outcomes that I want to give as a giveaway of my presentation is we need to stop thinking from a enterprise perspective and start thinking from an ecosystem perspective. But what is enterprise, what is ecosystem, and what is important in all this, and how come this is tied up with the AI and ML conference over here? So the bottom line for, or the red thread that draws between all these topics is data. So let me go back and throw over two magazines articles over here. So one is probably a decade old, and on the left, Harvard Business Review, and on the right, Economist at certain point said that big data or data and the mining of that would be a crucial thing for those companies to last long. And that has been there for 10 years. I don't think that is gonna go away a lot. But that's one of the key aspects that we all as companies are trying to understand. What do we hold, and how can we use the customers' information or partners' information in order to generate more revenues or at least provide better customer services? Whether it's e-commerce, whether it's banking, whether it's any other industry, data holds the true value in order to understand and give a very memorable journey for our consumers. But 10 years down the lane, so over here that you see is, I think the article from Economist is from 2017, and from HBR is around even before that. What was crucial is the highlight part. What I want to say is we have been dealing with data, we will be dealing with data, we are currently now dealing with data. But what differences does it make if we look beyond what is important within the data? So let me look from a broader perspective and say, okay, in order to look from an ecosystem angle, what we need to understand, and that's generally not for just the enterprise, but also our private lives, is to see and reflect on what happened in the past, what's going on today, and then chart a territory for moving ahead. We learn from our mistakes and then we embark on new journeys in order to improve what has not been done in the past. So if I look from a very broad angle, the times that we live in, and if we look back 10 years, I think at certain stage we were all using envelopes and we're also using post-it stamps in order to send our messages across, whether it's in the same city or cross continental. But over the years, what we have seen is that the consumption of data has increased. So people who are of this decade, who were born in this decade, or even the previous decade, probably don't even know how to lick a stamp, or they don't even have seen a stamp in the past. And the consumption of information that's been happening largely in territories like South America and Asia Pacific. A lot of people never owned a PC, they never owned a laptop, and all of a sudden now the internet as well as the mobile era has provided them with the means to go online and share their content and also consume the content. So this is an important aspect in order to see how the transition is happening in the decade or so. Just imagine a world when we are embarked on the projects like Loon or bombarding of the internet through satellites. Information will be flowing from to all the remote places that have not yet been hooked towards the internet. So within the last years, what we have also seen, a lot of companies over here, probably 10 years or 15 years, they were in the past, they were not even existing. So the key thing over here is all these companies who are existing today and have a major IPOs going on, they use our information, they use our data, they leverage upon that data, and then they sell that information to the customers like you and me again back. So these companies don't hold a product, they don't own a service per se. Sorry, they don't have a service per se. They have not been in existence in the past couple of years, but today they are major players within the market. So in summary, so what we see is that shift is happening in lightning speeds. The more people get connected to the internet, the more information it is being generated through them. There were underdogs who had no idea how to leverage information, but today they are the stars of TikTok. So that is the reachability of the data and the information that can provide a wider audience to our own resources, products, and services that we offer to our end consumers. So how do we do that? I mean, how we have information, we have data, we have bits and bytes, but how do we innovate on that information and data to create new value propositions? So within ABN AMRO, what we are doing, so I'm belonging to the architecture department, and over there, it's a central department within the bank that inherits corporate strategy. They look into the corporate strategy and see, can we leverage data with that corporate strategy? Can we leverage an ecosystem thinking? And can we leverage that information that is being holded up in our vaults and generate new value propositions? So we inherit those, then we define strategies together with the business lines, whether it's retail banking or wealth management, for instance, and then come up with ideas that might go into the market eventually as a product or a service. So there is a shift in thinking. So there have been companies like Kodaks and Nokia's and Blockbusters. They were great in their doing their own businesses. They were living in their own Atlantis and having their own monologue that we are the best in the world. So we can manage it all. We can do it all. Not small fishes will not be eating us as sharks. But today, if we need to survive, we need to constantly look around and see who can be the small companies that can have a value proposition that disrupts our own value proposition. So in order to do so, we constantly need to hunt around. As within the bank, that's what we do. I have a slide later on how do we do that. But apart from that, we need to we also recognize which companies are the companies we might they are in the startup phases, for instance, and companies we might want to buy or partner with them or poach them, or even competitors. So even though there might be some cannibalization of your own products and services, but sometimes working with a competitor gives you a larger leverage rather than running alone in that area. So this is an example of ecosystem within Netherlands. So in order for the common good, what we did, we created a financial forensic ecosystem where we are trying to stop anti-money laundering, terror financing. And we said, okay, even though ABN AMRO has its own customers and clients, according to the GDPR, we of course cannot share that information, but within the boundaries defined by the regulators. But there are areas where we can use and leverage AI and machine learning and finding patterns amongst not just the customers of ABN AMRO, but also other 4 top banks of Netherlands. So we created a consortium and said, okay, for the societal good, we need to identify if there are customers that we have that are doing transactions not considered to be ethical transactions. And together with our the small financial industry startups and also tech enablers, we created a platform where we are measuring each and every transaction and marking it with a red flag. So this is an example, an extreme example, for instance, where it's a B2B collaboration focusing towards a better good. But other than that, what we also have within Switzerland, we created an ecosystem called Marco Polo together with not just the banks, but also trading companies like large shipping companies for trade finance. So that's another ecosystem in a B2B market. So we have been toying around with the idea of ecosystems largely with other banks, competitors, partners in that space. But we are also now working towards an ecosystem in the B2C market. So how would that work? Like, to give a simple example, if you go and buy a house, at some stage you might need a mortgage or a loan from the bank, and that's the only place we come in contact with the consumer. So we say, okay, you get this rate of percent of interest to get the mortgage, and eventually we say, okay, this is the mortgage you'll have, and then we stop our relationship with the customer unless there is a foreclosure or something else. But what we are trying to shift is, there is a platform where we people can look for houses on sale. So we are making partnerships with those companies. We are making partnerships with insurance companies, the housing and real estate agents, so that all the services that you get right from the point of a customer's journey, if you look at it, thinking that we need to buy a new house, to the point that he goes and shifts and settles into it. So starting from finding a house and ending up with movers and packers. So bring all the participants, all the businesses together onto one platform. And you, as an ABN AMRO, well, the person who owns the platform takes the largest cut of the transactions that are happening on the platform. But it's a win-win for everybody else, because there are other banks also on the same platform. There are insurance companies and other aspects on the same platform as well. So this is how we came to think about ecosystem. But how do we think from an ecosystem perspective? So as I said, we look into the corporate strategy, then translate it into data and ecosystem strategy, if an ecosystem is even possible. And then we glue everything together with the architecture before the business line starts to execute on that. So for that reason, we are using a couple of things that we have in our own pocket in order to provide guidance. These are standard templates or activities that we do with the business lines. One is to find value. We have a value proposition canvas. Then we use the business model canvas to shape the idea that is going around within an ecosystem. We define the value streams starting from, and what is the final benefit for the consumer or other participants of an ecosystem. Then define the customer journey and do a pestle analysis to look for whether or not there is a threat or a chance of other aspects, regulatory aspects, that might hinder us from entering in an ecosystem or starting an ecosystem. So this is a visual of how we have done that. Some examples in that area. On the bottom left, you will see this is a one-page map of the entire services and products that we offer to the bank, that the bank offers towards the consumers. And the dots over there is a RAG report of whatever we're trying to do. So let's say if it is customer experience, so we'll say this is a customer experience on a page. If it is a green dot, that means we don't need to invest. We don't need to do anything in that area. If it's a red dot, that means we need to intensify and amplify our resources as well as investments in that area. And yellow is something in a point of horizon. We can say we can live with that capability for a year or so. Then once we have done that, we look into the strategic value and money spent in that area. So taking the same chart, and then we look into how much investment is needed in order to bring a capability from red to yellow, for instance, or red to green. And down below, there is a further drill down of that. What other capabilities? Because on a page does only give you one box, but it is if process. So there are it's a tree structure we have on the very top, level 1 process, and down below up to level 5. And then within level 5, we look into maybe some processes are right, maybe some processes are not right. But we don't limit ourselves only on the processes. We look from 4 angles. We look from data. So what we call it as a depot strategy. So we look from a data perspective. If the data is right, data is sanitized, we have clear ownership of the data. And then we look from an organization perspective. Is the organization ready for that change? Then we look from a process perspective. And whenever we look from a process perspective, we try to look from whether we can make this process more automated or lean. And then what technology is behind that, assisting all the depot other areas. So this is how we do our assessment. So this is another example that we play with our business lines, and that is an investment game. So it can't be like oftentimes we see in the banks or other organizations that everybody says, let's put our money on artificial intelligence. But we need to look towards the benefit and the cost involved in order to leverage that capability. So, and sometimes you will see departments that have been shouting for a lot of times that please provide a budget for this capability or for that investment, which they don't receive. So we limit the investment game. We give them 1,000 euros, for example, and say you can only invest in three categories. And we generate this result. We send out a questionnaire, and once the results are out, we actually discuss with the C levels or C minus one levels of that business line in order to see whether the reflection that's coming out from the different departments of, let's say, the retail banking, is it the right one that they all to also anticipate down in the future. So this gives us some kind of direction where the budgeting round should invest in, and then also gives us ideas how we need to mobilize the resources and the project organization in order to achieve the goals mentioned by these capabilities. Then this is so up till now I was given an example of how we are leveraging information. We are leveraging all these assets to look within the enterprise. Now, when we start looking outside the enterprise, what do we do with the same capability map? So this is in the center, you will see banking on a page or ABN AMRO on a page. And I'll take an example of the top one, which is investments management and wealth management. So these are the two capabilities ABN AMRO is offering towards our customers, whether it's a small consumer or it's a private investor or a high net worth individual. We are using these capabilities in order to provide our services. But every year, what we do is there is a publication in Netherlands that is Dutch FinTech, and we are part of that publication. We scan that publication. We look for companies and their beta values if they are not listed, and the companies that are very new into the market or in this domain. So we map those companies into different capabilities and try to understand if a particular company can be a threat down the lane to our own capability, or is there something they are already offering that we lack and we can probably go and partnership with them or offer to buy out. So this is an exercise from the innovation center. Together with the architecture, we look deep down into this and potentially look for a merger or acquisition. So what we call this thing within inside, prepare ourselves for partnering or to participate with them in a new value proposition, or go out right away and poach them. So this is all based upon the data. It is tightly in a bounded context of this one page snapshot of the organization. And through this information, we are leveraging lots of information. So, but if I look purely from information, what the slides that you have seen so far are quite clean, but behind that, it's a lot of information. So I'm not talking about information that has been terabytes of knowledge behind that. It's just connecting the different dots, but then rolling it up for the different stakeholders and what they need to see. But most important is, as I said, what they want to see. So we need to highlight, if we bring in a lot of information, if we bring in a lot of data, we'll be scratching our own heads. So we need to containerize the information that we want to perceive and to present to the right audience. So yes, data is important, but most important is the value that we want to get out of that data. So rather than collecting the data and say, okay, how can we use it in order to generate new value propositions, we turn it around and we say, what value do we want to give to our consumers or internal stakeholders in order to provide new value propositions? We then identify the right data elements rather than diving deep into all the data that we have and put it under a machine learning AI algorithm and try to sit back and say, okay, this is something worth we need to try. So we always look for value we want to bring and then fetch the right data. If we don't have that data within the bank, then we try to see if we can partner with some organizations that can provide that data. So if there is weather data that is needed in order to leverage a value proposition, then we will tie up with the company who is providing weather information to us. So this is to summarize. This is my last slide. I don't know if you recognize this picture. This picture was taken last year, and to again to focus on the point of value. So this is the picture of, and the only known picture of, a black hole, and that was taken by a researcher. So all the major telescopes of the world started pointing towards one piece of the sky. So they knew where to find that value they want to capture. And all these telescopes generated so much amount of in petabytes of information that more than 1,000 hard disks were flown over from different parts of the world to US in order to bring all the telemetry information the telescopes could gather, and then stitch it all that information into one picture. So this picture, or taking of this picture, was finding a needle in the haystack as size of a Luxembourg. So again, the point is, in order to provide value towards your consumers, first you need to look from a customer journey perspective, identify what value will bring a change towards them, towards your own value propositions and revenue, and only then identify the data elements that you need in order to make a proposition towards that. With this, I want to sign off with a thought-provoking article that came last year. That was in November in MIT Tech. I think you will be also able to find it. It's pretty easily available online. So MIT has started up with some experiments, and they discovered that in a couple of years' time, they have already done it in the lab. Uh, there will be AI and ML algorithms that don't even need data or need very little data in order to create supervised and unsupervised learning. So yes, data is important, but most important as a human, both from employees and from consumers' perspective, is the value that we bring from that data. Yeah, so that was my short presentation. Just in case if you want to know more about it or dive deeper into certain topics, how we do it, this was the synthesized version. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you. Motion, over towards you. Hello.
Hello. Hello, Mayank. Thank you so much, Mike, for your presentation. At the time that you have given to us, it's an honor and privilege that you have been the part of this conference. And I hope and I'm sure that this session will definitely add value in the speakers, in the attendees' point of view, and there in the add value in the professional career. I will request my audience to stay tuned and ask your questions on the main chat with my Nick. He is here to answer your questions. And now we are moving towards our next presentation. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. So now I will invite our next presenter, who is George. He will be presenting. George is working as a vice president private sector CAF, and he is presenting within few minutes. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.